Juan says, unlike the ancient Olympic Games on which they are based, the modern Olympics include professional as well as amateur athletes. So as soon as I read that, like my reading comp skills come out, and I'm like, whenever it says unlike something, what does that mean then, Amani, for the modern Olympics then? Or I'm sorry, what do we know about the ancient Olympics then?
We know that unlike I think this was the one that kind of tripped me up. We know that they have amateurs and professionals.
The modern do, right?
But the ancient didn't.
Yes, I got that just from reading that sentence. Like they do that in reading comp a lot, right? They say, unlike this theory does this. Well, if they're not similar, then whatever we're saying that theory does, the first theory didn't do it, right? So that's an important reading skill. Yep, excellent. So we're saying that, okay, so modern Olympics include professional as well as amateur athletes, but since amateurs rarely have the financial or material resources available to professionals, it is unlikely that amateurs will ever offer a serious challenge to professionals in those Olympic events in which amateurs compete against professionals. Hence, the presence of professional athletes violates the spirit of fairness essential to the games. I thought this was a very timely question to include for today. All right, so let's go through A through E and determine what would Juan say to each of these. So let's start with A. And it says whether the participation of both amateur and professional athletes is in accord with the ideals of the modern Olympics. Does Juan think that that is ideal, Taylor?
I would say no.
Excellent. Yeah, because he says professional athletes are violated. Like that's not good. All right, Giovanna, what would Juan say to B?
They're both. No.
Excellent. All right. Let's go with Allison. What would Juan say for C?
I said no for this one.
So he doesn't think that the athletes who complete are the world's finest?
Yeah, I guess I would go with C because I believe it talks about the finest because the difference between professional and amateur.
Oh, that's why you're saying no, is because you said that.
Yeah.
But couldn't they be the world's finest even though there's still a difference?
Yeah, I guess they could.
I said I don't know to C. What else did other people say?
I said I don't know.
I don't
as
know.
well.
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know.
yeah, I said I don't know because while we might like make the kind of jump there that I see you're making, Allison, I don't think it's strong enough for us to be able to like I would not bet money on that. Like I'm gonna say I don't know because we don't talk about world's finest or anything.
But Nicole,
yes,
oh dear, sorry. Do we still cross that off when it's an I don't know?
Yeah, that's what the cool part about this strategy is. When it's I don't, because they can't disagree or agree on something we don't know about one person. Excellent. All right, what about D? What do you think, Gina?
For D, I put yes.
So you think that Juan thinks that the amateur athletes have the financial resources that are available to professional athletes?
I just put yes based off of the but since amateurs rarely have the financial. Wait, hold on. What I just read? Like they talked about it a little bit.
Right. We do. We say they rarely have the financial need, right?
Right.
So does that mean that any amateur athletes has the financial and material resources?
No, it doesn't mean that.
Yeah, so we would say no. They think no to this. You're right that it was talked about, but it was talked about to say no. Like they're saying that these two people do not have the same resources. Do you see that, Gina?
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think the yes and no is just tripping me up a little bit, but I get what you're saying.
Well, whenever they talk about it, just because they talk about it, we still then just have to determine, like, are we saying yes to it? Like we agree or no? Like when we disagree, that's not saying we don't talk about it. We're just saying that we would say no to that statement. Like that like contradicts with what we said. Where D contradicts with what Juan said, because Juan said they rarely have the resources. Where D is saying that they have the same resources. And we know that's not true. So we would say no. Juan would say no.
Could I
Okay.
try explaining it really quickly?
Yeah, of course, Ria.
Okay, so if you take away the word whether and just put in the word do, like do any amateur athletes have the financial or material resources that are available to professional athletes, right? And then you just want to ask yourself, would Juan say yes to that question or would Juan say no to that question? And I kind of see where you're coming from, Gina, because when they say like, okay, something rarely happens, that kind of implies that it occasionally happens, right?
Right.
So then D is kind of tricky because it's just saying, do any amateur athletes ever have these resources available? And I feel like the answer to that maybe could be yes, if there's even one, right? And so I
Right.
think it's like a really tricky answer because the wording is kind of ambiguous. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I was just like, am I tripping or but I get what you're
I get
saying.
what you're saying, but
if
it being
something-
passed down. I get what you're saying, Sharia. Yeah.
Yeah, if something rarely happens, then it could happen once, right?
Right.
Right, it
Like,
could,
so-
but at the end of the day, then it would be more of an I don't know.
Yeah, it would be like somewhat of an I don't know because it's not extremely explicit or clear that like someone has these same financial resources. It's just saying it would be rare for them to have that. So I think we just don't know whether I think it would just be kind of like a we don't know, like it's more ambiguous. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
So then if anything, I would cross it off at that point. Because it'd be, I don't know, like while it's like alluding to either, we don't know. Like we don't say for certain either way. All right, so then E, what would you say for this one, Allison?
I actually didn't choose E. I was kind of stumped with this one.
So did you say
So
yes
I
or no
don't-
to this, or I don't know for just one?
I would guess yes for this one. Go on.
So you think that Juan would say that government sponsors professional as well as amateur athletes?
I felt like he was questioning that.
So do we ever mention government sponsors in with Juan's statement ever once? Do you know what, Allison?
Yeah, I'm not sure with this one.
Okay, no worries. What do you think, Giovanna?
No, it was never mentioned.
It was never
He has
mentioned.
no opinion on it.
And so if we don't know, it's no, we get to say, we get to cross it off, right?
Mhm.
It was never mentioned. Excellent. So
Mhm.
we're down to this. All right. So now we're down to just 2 answer choices to go through for M. Does anybody know how to pronounce that? Mexico, maybe? Mexico? Amani, what do you think M would say to A?
I think M would say no again.
So you don't think that M wants both amateur and professional athletes? Let's read M first. We should have done this first. So M says, but the idea of the modern Olympics is to showcase the world's finest athletes, regardless of their background or resources. Hence, professionals should be allowed to compete. So does A think that they both should be allowed to compete?
Hold on, I have to reread it. Yes, I feel like this is the, now that I've reread it, yes.
Yes, yeah,
They
I
feel
would
like they
agree.
both should.
Like, and like where some people don't like this answer is they say, well, he doesn't say that amateurs should be allowed, like he just talks about professionals. But at the end of the day, if the amateur were one of the finest athletes, should they be allowed to compete even though they're an amateur? Yes, right.
Yes.
He cares more about being he cares more about it just being like one of the finest athletes and less about if you're amateur or professional. All right, and let's go to B. So B says whether both amateur and professional athletes competed in the ancient Olympic Games upon which the modern Olympics are based. What would M say to that, Anna?
I don't know.
We don't know. We have no idea. We can cross that off. And so A is did everybody get A as your answer?
Mhm.
Excellent. Great job, everybody. How do you feel about that?